If Spite could pick up a sword and get a gym membership, it would look like this story. A blue-eyed boy who's not a boy, walking straight through Edo with one mission. Find the foreign men who turned her mother's life into a rumor and her own into a target, and send them all to whatever afterlife accepts cowards. We start in a locked-down Japan that hates two things: outsiders and the reminder that outsiders were ever here. Mizu's eyes do both. So she hides under a hat, keeps her voice low, and sharpens steel like it insulted her personally. She's not just swinging a blade, she forged the thing, hammering scrap and humiliation into something that actually cuts back. The first lead drags her into a pleasure quarter, where information is currency and men are very brave until it hurts. She walks in soft, leaves hard, and suddenly the entire neighborhood decides to find new careers. That's also where she meets Ringo, a chatterbox cook with one hand, way too much hope, and zero sense of self-preservation. He clocks her as special, tries to tag along, and gets told no in 8 different ways, then follows anyway like a puppy who heard the word walk. Mizu's got a list. 4 foreign men who were in Japan the year she was conceived. One of them is her father. All of them are guilty of existing in her story. She draws a map in her head and starts crossing provinces, collecting rumors and stacking bodies whenever someone mistakes her for easy prey. Because if the world spent your whole life calling you a monster, you may as well pick the kind with a code. Her childhood is the kind that forges knives, not smiles. Kids staring like she's haunted. Men sneering like she owes them an apology for her face. Her mother tries to keep her hidden, loved, but locked away. And that's when Mizu figures out that a cage isn't safer just because it was built with good intentions. She finds a teacher in steel and fire. Metal doesn't lie to you. You either survive the heat or you don't. Opposite her, there's Taigen, the golden boy samurai, with a jawline you could slice tofu on and an ego that writes checks his ribs can't cash. He and Mizu collide early. He thinks he's stepping on some nameless swordsman. He wakes up stepped on. Nothing humbles a guy faster than getting folded by the stranger he just called small, then realizing that stranger wasn't even trying. Back at the palace, Princess Akemi is living in a very pretty prison, promised to Taigen like she's fine lacquerware and not a human being. She's learning that power with no keys is still a cage, and the court smiles until your back is turned. She watches men decide her fate and decides something herself. She's done being furniture. When her path eventually bumps into Mizu's warpath, it's not friendship at first sight, but it's recognition. 2 people the world keeps trying to label who'd rather write their own. Mizu keeps moving. Bandits, Ronin, private militias with better outfits than skills. She cuts through the noise, but you can see the crack in her control. She's not just fighting opponents. She's fighting the version of herself built out of insults. Sometimes she leans into it, becomes the nightmare they already saw, and it works, but it leaves a stain. That's when Ringo pipes up, the only person brave enough to tell a walking storm to breathe. He doesn't preach. He reminds her she's not alone unless she chooses to be. The hunt narrows. One of the foreigners, a surgeon type likes, cutting things that don't fight back. He's a walking lesson in what happens when intelligence loses its soul. Mizu takes him apart with surgical precision and zero poetry. And it's not cathartic the way she hoped. He claims he wasn't her father, that he was just one of the men who stayed quiet. That's almost worse. Revenge isn't a straight line. It's a maze where every turn looks right until it doesn't. She sheds layers as she goes, starting with the biggest lie. When Ringo finally sees her as she is, he blinks once and shrugs. He already knew who she was where it mattered. He just didn't know what words to use. That trust gives her something she hasn't had since childhood: room to be more than an instrument. Tegan keeps popping up like a bad decision, swearing he's doing righteous work while clearly auditioning for most offended man alive. Every loss teaches him what honor actually costs, and you can almost see the gears grinding as he realizes his playbook doesn't cover people like Mizu. The idea that the best fighter in the room is a woman, that his idea of honor might be the costume, not the core. It's a slow bruise turning into wisdom. Meanwhile, the biggest name on Mizu's list casts a long, smoky shadow. A foreign arms dealer whose favorite hobby is smuggling progress where it'll hurt the most. He's not just a villain, he's a thesis on how greed talks about destiny. He sees Japan as wood to burn and people as kindling. And if he happens to have fathered a child while ruining lives, it's just another receipt he never plans to pay. For Mizu, he's not only a maybe father, he's a problem big enough that killing him would protect strangers she'll never meet. That's when revenge starts bending into purpose. As the journey drags her across snowfields and river towns, the mask of monster starts to slip in a different way. Sometimes restraint is harder than swinging. Sometimes the strongest move is walking past a fight she could win because it isn't the one that matters. That's not softness, it's precision. Self mastery isn't about choking rage out of existence, it's about leashing it and making it heal. By the time she finally cites the arms dealer's operation, there's a new line in her stance. She still wants blood. She's just stopped letting rage pick the targets. The past gave her pain. She hammered it into a blade. Now she's choosing where it cuts into men who deserve it and the future they're trying to sell. And if the world insists on calling her a demon for that, fine. Demons don't ask permission. They end cycles. So she stalks the operation like a wolf that learned math. It's set up on a quiet river bend, pretending to be a tofu warehouse, which is cute until you notice the guards with Dutch noses and the crates that somehow never squeak like tofu. Mizu watches the shift changes, the lantern signals, the way the night foreman scratches his ear right before a bribe changes hands. No rage, no noise, just a patient ledger in her head, adding up all the ways to make this place stop existing. She slips in on a rain night when sound washes away. There's a side door that sticks. She knows because she greased it yesterday. Just enough so the guard stops kicking it and gets lazy. Inside, it's a nest of oiled wood and foreign steel, rows of barrels wrapped like shame. She moves like she's not welcome but can't be stopped, tagging what she'll burn and what she'll steal. The only voice she leaves alive that night belongs to a quartermaster who thinks he speaks fast enough to dodge a blade. He doesn't. He does speak fast enough to give her a shipment schedule, a lover's address, and the name of the next river port. She tells him to tell his boss the demon came, smiled, and didn't take everything this time. By dawn, the operation looks like a bad dream of black smoke and melted ambition. Mizu's already gone, following the trail to the middleman, who funnels coin up the chain to the arms dealer, and from him to the coward behind him. If revenge is a mountain, she's been climbing it wrong, scrambling straight up sheer walls and bleeding for it. Now she's walking the switchbacks, and the hike is still brutal, but she's not falling every 5 steps. Ringo keeps trying to help, because nothing says stealth like a kid with 9 fingers and a heart too big for his apron. He shows up at camp with a pot strapped to his head, calls it armor, and tries very hard to carry a sword that's taller than him. She tells him to go home, and he nods, then casually cooks her fish while sitting on her map. He's not a fighter, but he's stubborn support, and sometimes that's worse. He asks her, plain as rain, who she is if this hunt ever ends. The question hits harder than a spear. She says it won't end until the last man is dead. He looks at her like a surgeon who hears a patient confuse a tumor for a personality, and then he hands her a bowl and tells her to eat. Meanwhile, back in polite society, the caged songbird snaps its gilded bars. A chemi bolts from a future where her life is a polite hostage exchange and stumbles straight into the kind of freedom that charges interest. She lands in a house of painted smiles and practiced heartbreak, where the top courtesan treats men like coin purses with legs. It's ugly, it's sharp, and it's the first place that teaches her how to turn the world's hunger into leverage. She learns fast. Eyes become armor, compliments become knives, and silence becomes a lockpick. Her old life told her to be pretty and grateful. This one tells her to be useful and unbreakable. She doesn't know it yet, but she's learning the same lesson Mizu did at a forge. If you're forced to be seen, decide how. Out in the sticks, our favorite fallen golden boy is chewing on humility like it's dry bark. Tigan's hunting for his runaway bride, and the ghost who made him taste dirt in a duel, and his ego still has a top knot all its own. He keeps tying his honor to things that don't fight back rules, ranks, the right family name. The world, rude as ever, keeps reminding him that honor's only real when there's a bruise attached. When Mizu finally corners the middleman, he's halfway through a tea ceremony like good manners will save him from consequences. She crashes the ritual, leaves the cups unbroken, and points a different kind of etiquette at his throat. He tries flattery, tries guilt, tries calling her boy with that little curl on the end like he's the first genius who cracked the code. She lowers her voice and corrects him, and the room gets very small. He gives her a ledger. He gives her a meeting spot where iron meets coin and a date that smells like a trap. She thanks him for the honesty and leaves him with his tea, because fear makes better pen pals than corpses. That's not mercy, that's craft. On the way to the next port, she takes a detour that looks like weakness and ends up being discipline. A woman on the road clocks her blue eyes and tight jaw, pulls her child close, and spits the old word for demon. The old Mizu would have carved the air just for the insult. This Mizu keeps walking and lets the road swallow the word even while it smolders behind her teeth. Rain again, because of course. She holes up in a glassmaker's loft, trading metalwork for a night's roof and a chance to borrow fire clean enough to change her face. It's not a mask, it's math with light. She grinds the pigment, blows the lenses, and tints them until blue becomes a brown. The world files under nothing to see. The glassmaker watches her like she's crafting a second self and asks what kind of person needs two faces. Mizu says the kind whose first face makes people stupid. He nods and calls that a tax, then tells her thieves and nobles pay it too. It's not a bond exactly, but for a few hours, she's a person in a room, not a mission in boots. Show night comes at the port. The arms dealer's men are dressed like dock rats, but smell like cologne and paperwork. The shipment is smaller than she expected, which is how she knows the real cargo is the meeting itself. They want to see who shows up to bite. She's not the cyclone anymore, but she still knows how to be weather. She slips through the stalls, past steaming eel skewers and dice games that sound like laughing bones, and she finds the tent where money hums. Inside, it's too clean, and the smiles are not attached to eyes. She leaves a lantern where it doesn't belong and waits. When steel finally talks, it's not a duel, it's a correction. She clips tendons, not throats. She cracks wrists, not skulls. Cruelty used to be her default. Now precision is, which is much scarier if you're on the business end. The man at the table is not the arms dealer, but he keeps the dealer's calendar and mistakes that for importance. He tells her our white devil has a ship with a foreign name and a captain with a price. He tells her a regional lord's about to get a private fireworks show with real blood. He smirks like he just joined the plot, and she wipes it off him without making a mess. Ringo nearly gets himself killed, stumbling into the aftermath with sesame buns and an apology. She hisses at him to leave, and he tells her he hates leaving her to be the only human in a room full of ghosts. It's a bad line and a better truth. She doesn't thank him, but she doesn't send him away either. Word trickles back fast. The demon's getting picky. The demon isn't slaughtering, she's choosing. The whispers make new fear, a smarter kind, and that bothers certain men who like their world simple and full of targets. They up the bounty and start sending hunters with practice, not just swagger. One of them catches her in a shrine courtyard under a fat moon. He's older, scarred up, steady, and he fights like he can't smell her rage at all, because he can't, because she's stopped spilling it everywhere. The duel is tight and almost polite. When it's done, he's kneeling, and he tells her she bothers him because she's not an animal and she's not a saint, and men like him don't know what to do with that. She leaves him breathing because he told the truth. Also, because killing him would be noise. Control is a muscle. She's finally not skipping leg day. Back in the city, Akemi climbs the ladder built out of glances. She's learning to turn appetite into a leash and generosity into a debt. She also learns that freedom that relies on a rich man's gaze is a leash with lipstick. Not news, but it lands different when you taste it. Tegan finally finds a clue in a mirror. Every step after that hurts less like pride and more like growth, which is disgusting, but here we are. He's chasing what he lost, but the trail keeps dragging him toward the person he needs to be if he ever wants to get anything worth having. And Mizu? She's got a ship to catch. The dealer's moving a test run of guns to a lord who thinks thunder should answer to him. If that cargo turns into a pattern, revenge becomes history class for children, and she won't let that happen. Pain made her blade. Choice makes it sharp. She walks to the docks with lenses on, and her name folded inside her like a secret she earned. Ringo shadows her with a basket he swears is a disguise. The tide's high, the moon's loud, and somewhere out there a man who deserves her rage is betting on shadows. Good. He's about to learn the difference between a demon and a decision. She doesn't stalk the docks so much as slide into them, like a shadow that learned manners. Lanterns swing, ropes creak, sailors brag loud because fear needs an audience. And every word they throw into the night tells her where to step. Ringo's disguise is a woven basket with holes poked for eyes, which somehow makes him more suspicious. But he's committed, and honestly, at this hour, commitment is a weapon. Mizu keeps her head down, her lenses on, and her breath steady, the way a blade sits quiet until it's asked to speak. The crates are stamped with a crooked foreign mark that looks like a drunk letter trying to stand up straight. The men moving them treat it like holy script. They whisper about silver, about new guns that don't misfire, about a boss who never dirties his shoes. The way they say boss, you can smell the perfume and the cowardice. It's a man who buys monsters like he's shopping for fruit. She steps into their circle without ceremony. One second they're swapping lies. Next second, 3 wrists are broken and 1 lantern is snuffed with a boot. The 4th man pulls a pistol because of course he does. And she's already moved by the time he remembers there's a trigger. She doesn't rage, she counts. She takes his aim, his fear, his stance, and subtracts all the things he thinks make him dangerous until it's just him and his heartbeat, and her blade, writing the period at the end. Ringo hangs back, doing this little whisper chant that's half prayer, half cooking timer. He's ready to bolt, but he doesn't, which is the difference between mascot and friend. When one of the dockhands tries to sneak up behind Mizu with a hook, Ringo bumps a crate off the stack, it crashes like thunder, and the man flinches long enough to learn a lesson about career changes. For someone who claims he can't fight, he keeps tripping fate in the right direction. Inside the warehouse, the stink hits like a dare. Tar, salt, and the metallic, nose-prickling itch of powder. The crates aren't just guns, they're futures. These rifles mean some lord with soft hands can write his family name in someone else's blood from 40 paces without ever looking them in the eye. Mizu runs a palm along a stock, feels the cold of it, and it doesn't take a philosopher to see how a machine like this shreds honor into confetti. The foreman is easy to spot. He's got the kind of mustache that swears it owns people and a ring with that same foreign mark. She's polite about it, slices the ring finger just enough that it slows his decisions down. He talks. They always do. He gives up a schedule, a route, a name he treats like a godfowler plus. The detail that the big shipment sails for a private island warehouse with stone walls and imported cannons like the shogunate won't notice if the flags are classy. She doesn't kill him, not because he deserves grace, but because his panic has a job tonight. Go tell your boss, the dark took your ship. Tell him you never even saw her face. Sometimes mercy is a sharper message than a corpse. It keeps moving. She rigs a distraction the old-fashioned way. A crooked fuse, 2 leaky barrels, and the power of human arrogance. Men run toward noise, Fire runs toward powder. She